deflation starts to take over. But I think Bitcoin will separate itself from software. It believes that Bitcoin is the end result of their world of code with no moats. Money is a driving factor in a lot of things. I really do try to follow a Buddhist framework in my head and think about things in that way. And money's a delusion. People think it brings them happiness, but when you get more, you need more. That has either beaten Bitcoin or been close to Bitcoin has been the thing that Sam and Lynn came up with as number 2 on the list.
When the world realizes that digital abundance is everywhere, they start looking for a place to hide. This is why we've seen a rush into physical assets, gold, silver, and commodities. But there is a massive demographic bottleneck. The wealthiest people in the world, the ones managing the $800 trillion in global financial assets, do not believe in Bitcoin. Their wealth was built on the old world of real estate and traditional finance. Visser argues that the only wealthy people who believe in Bitcoin are the ones who made their wealth in Bitcoin. This disconnect is exactly where the opportunity lies. If you found value in this breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with other investors who are paying attention. We're here to keep bringing you sharp analysis and voices that understand what's unfolding. Thanks for watching.
The last 4 months, let's take it from October 10th, since that seems to be the date that the crypto community has leaned on as the day that everything changed. And let's combine that with the chart that everyone has now seen, which is the software stocks relative to Bitcoin and the fact that it's like a 1-for-1 overlay. And I will say, not just now, but for this. So when people like Lynn Alden and Sam Callahan wrote this really good piece on liquidity and how Bitcoin is basically ahead of the NASDAQ, but they're all this positive liquidity story.
It's like Bitcoin is the most sensitive to
the most sensitive. Yeah. And Raoul Pal talks and shows the charts about liquidity to Bitcoin. I'm not a subscriber to this now. That made sense to me, let's say from 2009 or 2010 up until AI started to accelerate. At some point, there's a breaking point for me, which is deflation starts to take over. So when you're in a point where the government is able to print enough money to stop the Jeff Booth kind of, we're fighting against deflation, exponential innovation is deflation. At some point, there's no fight. And you only get to that point when it's replacing labor. Now, it's also a democratizing thing. So I wrote a paper in Substack this week about the democratization, and I got into the end about how this destroys the capital structure of the world. So what I believe we're entering into, and the reason software is going down, is because anything that can be recreated with AI, meaning on code for now, becomes worthless. It might take 10 years. It might take 1 year. I don't agree with anyone that comes up with an argument that SaaS is fine. They are in a multiple compression because 3 years from now, we don't know what's going to happen. But what we do know is the cost of intelligence. I pay the same amount of money for Claude as I did a year ago, but its capabilities are 100, 1,000 times where they were, which means in technology, this deflation is happening rapidly. The Chinese are offering more models. So in a world of deflation, all of the code-based assets should go down. But when you get to deflation, that's when you start to care about hiding. And the only thing you can hide in is scarcity. So when you watch my videos, I talk about abundance, that's code, and then scarcity. We are in the scarcity seeking mode. Right now, it's helped gold, it's helped silver, it's helped the physical things, because for the majority of people that own the money in the world, they don't believe in Bitcoin. The wealthiest people do not believe in Bitcoin. The only wealthy people that believe in Bitcoin are the ones that made their wealth from Bitcoin. That's it. That's why when I did the IPO thing, I'm like, guys, why would you keep all of your money in Bitcoin? You have to move some of it into the TradFi world. You have to move some of it into AI, which theoretically could destroy it. So that image was meant to show that we're in stage 2 of my thought process, which I think lasts until humanoids come. But I think Bitcoin will separate itself from software. And I think it'll happen this year. And so for the optimistic side of me, who believes that Bitcoin is the end result of their world of code with no moats, pretty soon you're going to have a growth asset that people look to that is scarce. So the day that you start seeing the software names kind of have a little bounce, but Bitcoin has a big bounce, which would be different than what happened back on Liberation Day. So every time we've had a fall, to go back to Lynn Alden and Sam Callahan, Bitcoin and the NASDAQ would run together. That's why it gets this negative thing. We are out of that world now. We are now in a world where deflation, is destroying multiples on companies built on code. And I don't think people have adapted to that. And I think the wealthiest people on the planet who manage money in an industry that I know so well, they don't believe in Bitcoin. They don't understand it because it has no narrative. It is a true scarce growth asset that is based on what Mike Novogratz said so eloquently there. Whatever you think about Mike Novogratz, it is a asset that was built by a community. Plain and simple. It is accepted as an asset. Hundreds of millions of people around the globe accept it as an asset. To me, in a world of deflation, I don't know what's going to be here 3 years from now, which means by definition, the moats are gone and you have to believe in something that has a moat. And as I've said, religion, gold, and now Bitcoin.
If even a fraction of that $800 trillion rotates into a $2 trillion Bitcoin market, the price targets become astronomical. We aren't just looking at 100K or 500K. We are looking at a fundamental re-rating of Bitcoin as the scarce growth asset of the digital age. Visser believes Bitcoin will officially separate itself from the software NASDAQ correlation this year. The day you see software bounce slightly while Bitcoin explodes is the day the rotation has officially begun.
There's always a scheme that's going on. There's always some way to make money. Money is a driving factor in a lot of things. I really do try to follow a Buddhist framework in my head and think about things in that way. And money's a delusion. People think it brings them happiness, but when you get more, you need more. So greed is just part of human nature, and it's just part of the things that are pleasure seeking. So I believe there's a rotation that happens. When you get into deflation, like you're getting now, you avoid the things that are deflating. Ford has been a horrible investment. Europe has been a horrible investment. Japan has been a good investment over the course of the last 15 years. It's been a horrible investment since 1992. The only thing that's worked that has either beaten Bitcoin or been close to Bitcoin has been the thing that Sam and Lynn came up with as number 2 on the list. It's the one that Raul talks about as innovation directly to Bitcoin. They move together. So theoretically, you need to believe that the inflation, that we print money, the NASDAQ and innovation goes higher. Well, that's over for me. Commodities have been sideways since 2007, even with the rally we've seen, because they peaked then and they went down. Oil was $155 when I went to China in May of 2008. We're down in the 60s. So there is deflation that happens with more innovation. It's just that we get caught in this thing to think, well, they print money and the stock market goes higher. The stock market has not gone higher in Brazil in local terms, in dollar terms. So I have this thing of rotation in the back of my mind that if the fiat system is $800 trillion and Bitcoin is $2 trillion, which it's not right now, but let's assume we get back to 2 trillion, there's a rotation that'll happen. What'll drive it up to 50 trillion, to 100 trillion? The only thing in my mind has always been the rotation. The most logical answer is if everyone who owns the 800 trillion, you took their average age in their 60s, and you gave all that money to someone who's younger, and you said, what's your asset allocation? You have 800 trillion in this bucket, you have 2 trillion there. Well, I want some money in Bitcoin. You'd have a rotation, and this would go higher and that would go down. Eventually, that's what I believe. So I've said this before. I believe the world is deleveraging. The 800 trillion is heading back towards where it should be, which is monetary base of the world, nominal GDP of the world. Both those numbers are about $120 trillion. Now, the question is, do we go from 800 to 120 trillion overnight? Well, that was the Great Depression. That's not allowed. That's what the governments are going to do everything they can to prevent. The more likely scenario is that we come down in this manner over the course of 20 to 50 years. And that's why deflation equals deleverage. Deleverage equals Bitcoin to go higher as part of the rotation. So I'm not in any way changing the goalposts. This has always been my writing. This has always been my thesis. I will say to everyone, I got sucked into believing in Bitcoin in this theory when I listened to Michael Saylor back in 2021, when he was describing the decision. And I always say, yes, he did bring up debasing. He did bring up that the government was going to steal his money by moving rates to zero while inflation was going to go higher, and he was sitting with money in his bank, in his treasury account. But he also said he was in this position where he had to make a decision because of exponential innovation. Because Microsoft had completely destroyed his software business, he could not compete with them anymore. That is where you have this running of inflation that is incredibly deflationary, and it allowed these companies to have a moat. that they're not going to have in a world of intelligence. So
If you found value in this breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with other investors who are paying attention. We're here to keep bringing you sharp analysis and voices that understand what's unfolding. Thanks for watching.